On Tuesday, several high-profile officials in Region 9, including Regional Chairman Brian Allicock, wrote to Prime Minister Brigadier Retired Mark Phillips requesting a phased reopening of the border that would allow for people to cross. But Phillips told the newsroom by telephone on Wednesday that he had only seen the letter on social media. He said, however, that the government has been considering the demands and has considered allowing persons to cross. The Prime Minister also said that trucks which were prevented from coming to Guyana for the period arrived over the last 2 days in Lethem with the much-needed supplies. While the restrictions will remain in place, allowing for crossing to be opened on Thursdays only, the Prime Minister explained that Brazilians will be allowed into the country. Those persons would need to be vaccinated with at least one dose of a COVID-19 vaccine and present a negative PCR COVID-19 test taken within 72 hours of traveling to be allowed entry into Guyana. The arrangement is the same as all other ports of entry.
Right, so the trucks are basically allowed to come over to deliver the supplies to the shops. Outside of that, considerations for allowing Brazilians to cross over into Guyana, that is being considered, and the border will be treated like any other port of entry, where you're required to be vaccinated with at least one dose of a vaccine, and you have to do a PCR test, and that test has to be negative, and it must not be more than 72 hours old.
The Prime Minister believes that the arrangement that existed for more than a year was helpful in easing the burden. But even with that arrangement in place, authorities and residents in Region 9, Upper Takutu, Upper Essequibo, had complained of dwindling economic activity and increased hardships. There was also an almost 3-week protest which saw no goods being sent from Bonfim to Lethem.
The border, as you know, was closed for a reason. Yeah. And that reason is COVID-19. Now, if you close the border for COVID-19, obviously everything will be affected. Right? What we did, and it has been in place for about a year now, is that we allowed goods to come from Brazil every Thursday. And that kind of like ease the pressure. Right? What we're dealing with now is the protest and demand and request, however you want to put it, for Brazilians and perhaps Guyanese who are living in Brazil who wants to come over like how they did before the border was closed. You know, like individuals drive over or take a taxi and come over. That is the issue that caused the protest.
The regional officials had proposed that the border opens on Thursdays from 7 hours to 17 hours to facilitate the passage of small and large goods. They suggested that the border only be open for domestic travels on Friday at 8 hours, 13 hours and 18 hours for a period of 15 minutes for residents of Bonfim and Guyana only. Persons would be required to present proof of residence, fully vaccinated status, along with their identification before being allowed to cross. The letter outlined too that the health team would be placed at the port of entry checkpoint to conduct screenings. It was also said that before the recommendations were put forward, consultations were held with all businesses and relevant authorities in the region to reinforce the importance of adhering to the measures. Meanwhile, in a recent statement, Minister of Health Dr. Frank Anthony said that while it was Guyana's desire to have the border between the two countries opened as quickly as possible, this had to be done safely given the continuing rise in COVID-19 cases and the threat of the spread of the Delta variant across the communities. Brazil is among the countries with the highest COVID-19 infection rates and deaths in the world.